Hello everyone, James Donaldson here, and great ways to support me are on YouTube, Patreon, Instagram, and by clicking the links below to buy books from my Spy series. Thank you. Alright everyone, James Donaldson here with the Contemporary Gentleman, and we're going to be talking in this video about what's so great about an AR style weapon. This is an AR pistol, by the way. And from there, why would a civilian ever need one? Gosh. Alright everyone, so diving right into the meat and potatoes. First of all, I want to make a really big point that AR is not synonymous with a lot of other weapons that are pretty much doing the same thing. AR is just a semi-automatic rifle, or in some cases pistol, that is chambered in rifle cartridge, which we'll talk about pistols that are chambered in rifle cartridges. And that's about it. And an AR and some of the non-AR variants that do the same thing, they of course have extended magazines or high-capacity magazines. That's a whole other video you can check out, why that's a stupid thing. But that's kind of my point, as everyone talks about ARs. Well, there's AKs, there's SCARs, BARs, no, not BAR, ACR, BRINs, the list goes on. So, that said, a lot of what I talk about today does apply to those things as well, but we're really focused on the AR, as it were. Now, obviously, as I've hit on other videos, AR is a throwback to the original design from Armalite. So, AR, Armalite rifle, and there was an AR-10, which was in 7.62 or 308, I want to say, and it was actually marketed for hunting. So, if you look back at the old style AR-10s, so bigger platform because it's doing a bigger bullet. They got like the plastic, hand guard and all that. That actually was marketed for hunting. For instance, in Kansas, you could hunt deer with an AR, and I plan to at some point in the future. So, it does not stand for assault rifle or automatic rifle or anything like that. Now that we have that out of the way. So the AR-15 is just a civilian variant of the M4 or M16 or whatever. The designations are really inane. They're erroneous. They don't matter whatsoever. A gun is a gun, a rifle is a rifle, weapon is a weapon, all that kind of stuff. So worrying about basically calling a rifle an AR specifically is like just calling this a Glock. There's many variants of the Glock. There's many variants of other pistols. So, let's just put that one to bed, please. So, getting right into it, first of all, self-defense. Why would anyone want this for self-defense? Well, let's talk about that. It is extremely easy to aim. Very easy to aim. Next, it is semi-automatic, so it reloads itself. Then, of course, it's also accurate, for sure. So, there's that. And then, of course, you can also customize it. So, you could change out the script if you don't like it to one that's more angled, or that's more straight up and down. You can change out this. You can change out this tube to make it shorter or longer. You can change out this, as I did. you can change out this entire handguard. Basically, it's very easy to change out any part of it. A lot of people do, in fact, have completely customized AR setups. I think that's great, because that's kind of the whole point of the platform. A lot of people don't know bump stocks came to existence not to fire as if you have a machine gun, because they're not a machine gun, but as if you have a machine gun. But they actually came out for disabled veterans who still wanted to fire an AR. The way it works is the grip is attached to the stock, and you pull the gun forward, and the grip is separate from this part. So the receiver says you pull forward, it pulls your arm back and pulls the trigger. Therefore, you're literally using your tricep on your other arm to fire the weapon. Yeah, but now disabled veterans can shoot ARs. Cool. So, moving on to multiple attackers. So, you can put in a capacity magazine of whatever you want, and you can handle multiple attackers. And people always say, oh, well, when is there ever a multiple attacker? Well, home invasions are pretty common, and they're usually at least 3 people. Yeah, the statistics that if you even just fire a warning shot or just so much as cock a shotgun that they might run off, highly possible. Is it possible they don't and engage with you in front of your family? Yeah, that's possible. Statistics are statistics. They're not guarantees. So, having everything you need to feel confident and to effectively fight off groups such as home invaders, which are very violent and often result in horrible things, well, yeah, you should have everything you need, including a large capacity magazine and a rifle that's effective. Of course, you can always see my video on magazine capacity for more details. Now, moving on to hunting. So, pests, coyote, hogs. Now, let's never mind the fact that you could hunt a deer with an AR in Kansas and other states. Totally possible. But let's talk about where an AR is pretty much a necessity for hunting an animal. And again, we go back to pests. Coyotes, hogs, what else we got? Anyway, those are great examples because basically they're detriment to the environment. Hogs are actually a big problem to people who grow crops. And if you think that has nothing to do with you, you need to read a book or even Wikipedia about how crops, ethanol, soybeans, corn, wheat, the list goes on. Those things are used for a lot more than just the things you associate them with. Anyway, hogs, they reproduce at a rate much higher than our best year of eradicating them with ARs. So people hunt them with night vision, they hunt them from helicopters, all that kind of stuff. I would say if you work on a ranch where you've got hogs and or coyotes, an AR is probably a necessity. Not necessarily in 5.56 as I've studied, but there are plenty of other calibers you can get an AR in. So there you have an example of something that's a necessity. So now let's talk weapon of war, which I kind of have a video on, but we're going to touch on this lightly. Again, as I said, it was designed marketed as a hunting rifle, and then the military saw its application, wanted it to be used. However, they wanted it in the NATO caliber 5.56. So Armalite and others that were entering into the contract to win, or into the contest to win the contract, they conformed to the size that NATO wanted. So why did NATO/the U.S. government want 5.56? Well, the U.S. government wanted it because NATO did. So why is it an effective round? Well, it's not as effective as killing, for instance, against something like a 270 or 300 Win Mag, for something like elk. And people say it's meant for maximum damage, and I would say not really. But the other thing is, the damage is done by a bullet. It really has nothing to do with a rifle. The way a rifle shoots a bullet doesn't really affect it. Now, you could have bad rifling or different rifling or something like that, but we're not going to get into all that. The point is that a gun just fires a bullet, but everything the bullet does is pretty much determined by barrel length, which you could have this gun, which is going to send a round that's going to lose velocity over distance, or a bolt action gun with a longer barrel, say 18 or 20 inch, that round is going to be much more effective. So if you're talking 500 meters, a bolt action gun with a 5.56 is going to be more effective than this AR with the 5.56. So people getting all bent up about that kind of stuff is really silly, and they're missing the point here. Now, Can you kill with 5.56? Yes. The reason NATO went with the 5.56 is because it tumbles from the originally intended barrel length, so about 16, 18 inches. I want to say 18, maybe even 20. 18 to 20. So the bullet tumbles. It is effective. That said, it's not as effective as a 308. As I talk about in my video on weapon of war, NATO wasn't necessarily trying to kill because they want to bleed out government funds of the enemy. Well, an alive soldier costs more and takes other soldiers out of a fight a lot more than a dead one. Simple as that. So, another reason is, after a lot of studying, it was discovered that the people who win the firefight are the people with the most bullets. Well, if you have someone carrying 308 capacity, in terms of magazines, weapon, etc., someone with 5.56, you're going to have a lot more ammo. Plus, once you have multiple soldiers with much more ammo, now you've got a metric fuck ton more ammo. So, you're probably going to win the firefight. That's just what it comes down to. So yet another reason why the 5.56 is great. Don't get me wrong, 5.56 is a great round. It does kill people. It has killed a lot of people. But there's some other things they needed it to do than just kill people. So that's why 5.56 over 308. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad round or ineffective. Next. But does a civilian need it? Well, I hate the word need, which is funny because need also gets thrown around the firearms community, and I tell people that's ridiculous. Don't say it's not about need when people are trying to take your guns and then tell someone that wants to put a flashlight on a gun that they don't need that. Oh, they don't need that. That's absolutely absurd. First of all, you do need a flashlight on any defensive weapon. And second, who cares? Shut up. Sorry, totally soapbox moment. Anyway, it's not about need because no one, especially politicians who are protected by people like the Secret Service and our bodyguards, nobody has a right to tell you that they know how your future is going to turn out. Again, home invaders, 3 to 5 people oftentimes. So, Joe Biden telling you that, just a pump action shotgun is all you need, it might be, but also might not be, especially if you lock it up the way the government thinks you should lock it up and you can't get to it, versus the many other safe, secure ways. I do a video on gun storage. Anyway, I'm digressing. Let's look back at our hunting analogy. So, let's compare it to something that I usually try not to compare guns to, but it's going to work for this analogy. Cars. So, in New York, a car is not necessary. It's not a necessity. There's public transportation, there's walking, all those kinds of things. It's very common to not own a car in New York. Whereas in a rural area like Kansas City, where we have very little public transportation, but some, car is pretty much a necessity. Now, I have known people that live downtown and manage to get along without cars, but it's because they work from home, or they also work downtown. So, there are those things. Now, but think about suburban areas. A car is pretty much a necessity. In fact, this day and age, it's probably pretty rare that a family only has one car. They probably have 2. Well, again, in some areas, something like an AR might not make sense. Even we'll exclude silly laws. Barring silly laws, a gun like this might not make sense. I don't know what those attributes to the situation are, but might not. Whereas if you're a hunter and you have to deal with, if you're a landowner and you have to deal with hogs, an AR is going to make a lot of sense. I would say someone in New York, where there's lots of violent crime, an AR might make sense if they allowed them. So, why would a citizen need them? Well, does it really matter? Now let's get into caveats and variables. So, as I said, parts, so especially the rail, but all different kinds of parts can be exchanged. That's what makes them a great rifle. Common use, so that's another interesting thing, is a judge ruled that ARs, I don't remember all the details of the case, I'm sure everyone else does, I just don't have a great memory right now, but there are 2 AR-15s for every Ford F-150, which is the best-selling pickup truck, by the way, for every Ford F-150 in the United States. So, common use is a big thing in legal discrepancies to determine something. So, if something's in wide use, necessity really has no play in it. The whole concept of need doesn't matter because so many people own them. You're basically just making people into criminals, and it's obviously something that's not a problem. So once again, there we have it. So, common use. Common use. Suppressors, if they're not over that threshold now, they're going to be within the next year. Because we're into the several millions that people own in this country. And I will say, they're like tattoos and guns. Once you get one suppressor, you're probably going to be buying more. There's a couple other things people talk about as firepower, and I've kind of talked about that already, but the effectiveness of your weapon is only determined by how it is in correlation to what you're doing. So this AR-15 would be horrible if I was trying to engage and counter-sniper other snipers at 600 meters. And there's plenty of other jobs it's not going to be good at. This AR-15 pistol, it is not going to be good for concealed carry, as I'm sure you can tell. So, yet another example. Now, how fast can it shoot? Well, here's a great video that I'll put in the link, and it features somebody shooting a semi-automatic rifle, but the cadence, meaning the speed in which they're firing, sounds fully auto. This is what determines that. People can create complicated triggers that do all kinds of stuff to make a gun seem like it's a machine gun. People can make and buy machine guns. At the end of the day, what makes a gun effective is you. Not the gun, not the caliber. I know I said a moment ago, gun versus task. Yes, but at the end of the day, example is 243 is a smaller end hunting round. Most people would do is like a deer, although people kill elk with it. People kill moose with it. There's people that would never do that. Well, there's a lot of variables outside of the gun and the caliber and the shooter as well. But the shooter's a big piece of that. So a shooter that has been shooting 243, they shoot hundreds of times a year, and they have for the last 20 years, they're probably going to be able to take down a moose with that 243. Somebody who rarely ever shoots their rifle and takes down one deer a year with it and doesn't really practice with outside of that, they probably aren't a candidate to use that smaller caliber on bigger game. So, again, your trigger finger, your mind, what are you doing? Basically, there are people who can turn any mundane item into a weapon. Magazine, newspaper, all that kind of stuff. So, at the end of the day, should people be wary of those things? No, it's the person. One mind, any weapon. So an interesting topic is a coworker of mine doesn't want an AR-15 and doesn't think people should own them because he knows his neighbor has one, doesn't think his neighbor should own one. So his idea is that A, he's not going to own one at all, and B, he thinks they should all be taken away from us because he doesn't think his neighbor should have one. So I do understand the emotional side of that argument, but at the same time, that's basically be like cutting off your right hand because you don't want X other person to have one. Well, no one should have a right hand because that guy shouldn't. Because basically, I'm an individual he trusts with an AR, but that would mean that I can't have it. So that's the thing, is it really with the 2A, it really comes down to all or nothing. And I choose all because I'm always going to have all the options available to me to make myself safe and my family safe. Once you start taking away this and that and nitpicking and, oh, we could do this but not this, that's when you're limiting the good people that should have everything. So obviously felons and people like that, violent people, people that beat their wives, of course they shouldn't have these weapons. But by taking the weapons away because you think you're stopping those people from getting them, they're going to get them. So what you're actually doing is endangering the people that are in danger of being hurt by those people. So there you have it. Stop cutting off your right hand so that you can make a criminal less effective. Why don't you become the most effective person you can? People learn about finances. People learn about work ethic, all that. But yet not enough people are learning about guns or hand-to-hand combat to make themselves and their families safer. That is a responsibility, I shit you not, but people don't take it seriously because we become too comfortable in this world letting other people do the dirty work. I'm going to tell you right now, some people can't do it, some people can, but you should at least have some familiarity. Anyway, once again, soapboxed it again. Stepping down now. So the argument comes up a lot, of course. Just use a shotgun. Pump action shotgun, scare them off. So I want my gun ready to fire before I'm ready to fire. So what that means is I don't want to have to do things to further prepare my weapon, with the exception of flipping the safety off, which is a trained task for me. So it's off. So there we go. Weapon was made ready, and it was really off before I had it on my shoulder. So there is that. Now, the other thing is, shotguns don't hold a lot of ammo. You can go back to my video on why you should be allowed to have a lot of ammo and a weapon at a given time. But understand that I had a shotgun that you could put 14 rounds in. That's not half of what I can throw into my AR. The other problem is, while I would be okay with that, it's not like it was a magazine. You had to load them back in there. It was kind of an event to throw them in. Could you get quick at it with practice? Yes, but are you ever going to be faster than just pulling a magazine out and putting another one in? No, you were never going to be close. So, also, the recoil. Even you go 20 gauge, the recoil of an AR in 5.56 is so much less severe than than a shotgun. Now you could go 410, okay, but at that point, like, why? And you're probably not going to have a high capacity in a 410. Maybe you can get pump, but what you're probably doing the 410 is a double barrel. I do not recommend one of those for home defense. If you have nothing better or laws restrict you, I get it. But if you have the choice between an AR style weapon and a shotgun and double barrel of a 410, I strongly urge you to go with the AR. So, now there's also point of impact versus point of aim. The AR is going to be right on pretty much any distance within 100 yards, 100 meters, whatever. The shotgun obviously is going to fan out. Now, a lot of people think it's instant, like, you know, the rounds come out of the barrel and just immediate cone. No, it actually stays a pretty tight group. So despite what people say, which is mind-numbing atrocity that they say this, you don't, when they say you don't have to aim a shotgun, of course you do. Stop telling people that. That's so irresponsible. Just, oh, I'm really letting all my emotions out on this one. Totally unprofessional. Stop telling people that. Of course you have to fucking aim a shotgun. Don't be ridiculous. I'm sure I'll do a video on that later. Anyway, let's go on to the next. So, more control, obviously, over an AR than a shotgun, for sure, especially from a smaller frame person, of any gender, sex, whatever. I don't want to get in trouble, but whoever you are, and even child, there are stories of children, especially pretty young children, using guns to defend themselves against home intruders, home invaders, whatever you want to call them, and they did it effectively, lawfully, and safely. So, good on those kids, and good on their parents for teaching them how to handle a firearm, because it doesn't matter who you are, your life is worth saving. So, now finally, the AR is easier to suppress than a shotgun. I am working on a review for Salvo 12. Thus far, I would not recommend one. But that being said, it's going to be way easier to suppress one of these, and if you only want to buy one suppressor for rifles, then you can put on your rifle. You're pretty committed to only suppressing a shotgun with a shotgun suppressor, so there is that. Now, why would you want to use a suppressor? I have videos on that, but for the short, this gun, for instance, because it's such a short barrel, is very, very loud, even with a suppressor on. But that said, it's going to save my hearing all the more. And my family's hearing. I've got kids, I've got a wife. I don't need to be, destroying someone's eardrums because I'm trying to save a life or get someone out of my house. So, also, it's going to keep the concussion down inside. That's another big part of indoor fighting with ARs. Having a suppressor on going to drastically cut down on the disorientation that can occur, especially with a short AR-15 pistol, in my case, like this. Fighting tyranny. We're almost done here. Fighting tyranny. Well, fighting tyranny is how we won our independence. For those of you who are unaware, I can't imagine, especially anyone that made it this far in this video, isn't aware of that. So, now we've got some other things here. We've got the Battle of Athens, Waco, Texas, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Ruby Ridge. So some of the ones, we got the Battle of Athens, Georgia. They were fighting tyranny because basically it's confirmed by historians today that the people in charge were cheating elections to be in charge. Some soldiers came home that were in the National Guard, and they saw how their town was being mistreated, and they took up arms, and they challenged those people. And after a fight, those people did flee. So, definitely guilty. Anyway, a lot of people aren't aware of that story. It actually didn't happen that long ago. But they say, well, when was an election cheated, or when have we fought tyranny since the revolution? A few times, actually. Again, read a book, even a Wikipedia article. So Waco, everyone talks about. Ruby Ridge, those are pretty popular ones. Again, I don't want to drag out this video anymore. Of course, there's also the Viet Cong and the Taliban. When Joe Biden says we're going to need nukes and nukes and F-16s, you're wrong. And also, by the way, the Taliban dumped all their AKs for AR variants. So, pretty interesting information. But if you think that you can't fight off a government with small arms and some crafty movement, then you're wrong. Because again, Taliban, Viet Cong, many other sects have done it. It's history. Wikipedia, you know. Finally, the U.S. government is imperfect. If you look into the eugenics project, basically Tuskegee experiment, Project MK Ultra, and Operation Mockingbird. So those were all. Operation Mockingbird was the CIA infiltrating mainstream media. Sounds like a recent thing. It's probably still going on, but it was, I want to say it was back in the 50s. Tuskegee experiment is when members of the African American community were getting syphilis without them knowing. So the CDC, who did that, by the way, so that they could monitor the effects as if they're not human and they didn't already have that data. So the list goes on. By the way, sitting president basically threatened the people of the U.S. with nukes and F-16s. So a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about because he's been protected by other people his whole life is trying to tell you that you don't have a right to certain tools to protect yourself. I find that interesting. The AR-15 is nothing more than a variation of a semi-automatic rifle. It is a great all-around weapon for self-defense, as well as some hunting applications, and a few others. The only reason to not own one is that they're a horrible pain to clean, but still worth owning one. And in summary, if I could only own one type of rifle, I would own a variation of an AR-10, because I could hunt with it, I could use it for self-defense, and it would be great fun to shoot. So, again, if I could only own one rifle, it would be a semi-automatic AR-10 configuration rifle in .308. And there we have it. So, this has been James Donson with The Contemporary Gentleman. And until next time, keep your composure.